Recording.
Oops.
Mr. Buckert. And
6. How many do we need for a quorum?
5.
Oh, wow.
Even when we don't have anything?
Unless we don't have a meeting. Believe me, we've had this back and forth with the cat. Fun to have.
Yeah, we do have like one. How do you do that? How do you vote?
On the minutes.
We called over the Wednesday, November 20th, HALRB meeting. Please call the roll.
Maury Davis,
Here.
Becca, Backler, Peter, Alex Foster.
Here comes Andy.
Great. Alec Ham. Jerry Laporte,
Here.
Joan Lawrence,
Here.
Katie Myers,
Here.
Andy Winchell,
Here.
Dick Woodruff.
Here.
Yeah, the forum.
That will go to the explanation of the public hearing procedures. So again, welcome to tonight's meeting. So effective on July 1, 2020, updated state regulation now require certain county commissions, including there'll be hearings are provided in a hybrid environment, both in person and streamlined. The public may attend participate either virtually or in person. Members of the board joining us virtually this evening, please join us via the Microsoft Teams link. If your device is muted and you'd like to speak, but please ensure your video is turned on and you're visible during the entire process of being processed. For members of the public joining us this evening, today's meeting is available to stream via Microsoft Teams link. There's also a dial-in phone number. Use it. If your device muted and your video turned off until you are called up to speak. Speakers not sponsoring items for the agenda. Registration to speak online at today's meeting if required. Speaker slips are available at the front of the room for those in-person speakers. Now, I'll call you to speak after presentation of the agenda item. The meeting chat is active for participants who need technical assistance only. It should not be used for discussion, public comment, questions about the agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared publicly and verbally. All comments must be shared verbally for recording during the assigned public testimony period. All voting will be done by call the roll. And lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. Information posted to today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. That will review and approve the October. Any questions or comments, concerns? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I move we approve the October minutes. Second.
Please call the roll.
Maury Davis,
Yes.
Alex Foster. Yes. Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Andy Winchell,
Yes.
Dick Woodruff.
Here. Yes. Sorry.
Motion passed. Or minute passed. Minutes approved.
Great. All right. Next on the agenda is the COA on the consent agenda. There's one item, item 24-25 at 3421 21st Avenue North, Third District. Are there any questions or concerns about this consent agenda item? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the item on the consent agenda.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Maury Davis,
Yes.
Who's coming in the right direction to start with?
Great.
Alex Foster,
Yes. Yes.
Ray, do you approve the consent agenda?
Yes.
Terry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Andy Winchell,
Yes.
Dick Woodruff.
Yes.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
You can tell Mike.
Okay, all right. Mr. Acker, thank you so much for joining us. Your item was just approved by the HALRB, so I'll follow up tomorrow morning with your approval paperwork. But thank you for joining us. You're welcome to stay if you'd like, or you can leave at this point.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
There's also one administrative view and information. And with that, we'll move on to the chair's report. And first one item is the nominating.
Okay, sure. So as I explained in the email, every year in November, you all select the members who are going to serve on the nominating committee to help select the leadership slate for chair and vice chair for the following year, so in 2025. And it can have up to 3 members. So last year it was, I believe, Ray, Dick, and Mark who served on the nominating committee. So you all will have to select at least up to 3 people to be on the committee for putting together the leadership slate for next year's HALRB. So. Any
Any
takers?
volunteers? I'll volunteer.
Yeah. Okay, Jerry. Right, at least one other person would be good.
I'll volunteer.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks,
John.
John. Next we'll move into next we'll move actually let's move into the Facebook.
Everybody. I'm sorry, I meant to give it to you earlier.
First, we'll do the audit site plan, and Dick and John, I guess. I think maybe one of you wants to read one.
What are we talking about?
The audit.
So you went to the committee.
I know they kept kind of the OG and I finally, oh yeah, the advisory working group, AWG.
Oh, for Barcroft.
Barcroft,
You don't mind giving a bit of a summary if you remember what was.
Yeah,
What went over in October, and Joan, if you go over what was over.
Okay.
That would be great.
yeah, I don't know, were you on the call or were you there?
Half of the meeting I was there.
Okay, so maybe you can fill in if I
Sure.
forget. The meeting was mostly about what they call the cross
Cross-section.
section, is that the term they use? Which is just another word for the roads that are gonna go through the development. Took me a while to figure that out, but once the discussion started, it was clearly all about the roads. And beyond that, there was a lot of moaning and whining about efficient bike access along one of the main roads. And beyond that, I sort of lost interest because it wasn't really about historic preservation at all. So if you could answer, I mean, I thought it would be about.
I thought it was too. I thought it was supposed to be more than that too, but it really did seem like our planner, Rob Gibson, who was really kind of talking, I think, a lot about those cross sections, and I guess just the flow of how Barcroft is going to be was really dominating the conversation. But I think it was also a way for planning staff to kind of give a little bit of like a refresher to everybody how all the things that had been talked about from February to May of 2024 and how there's like this big plan for Barcroft that would mean certain text updates would need to happen in the actual form-based code, and what those things were, which could be anything from the cross sections down to potential changes in design approaches for Barcroft. So that is probably the more interesting stuff for preservation, because that is all the administrative code if everybody's comfortable with it, which we can kind of get into after Joan gives her summary of the November meeting. But you're right, it was mainly about the cross sections and ideas about making sure that there's adequate space for the roads, pedestrians, cyclists, as well as just pedestrian experience. So that's probably about it for the October. Joan?
That carried over into November.
Yeah.
A bit too. And for those of you who haven't seen a cross section, it's like imagine just looking at a road and it shows the traffic lanes, it shows the bike lanes, also the trees, the sidewalks, the building faces, and all that sort of thing. So that did carry over. I talked about looking at the two different, there are two different form-based codes for Columbia Pike. One is the commercial one that was enacted first, and that deals with certain commercial areas. The other is the neighborhoods one, which I was on that committee for, seemed like forever. And that's the one that has the most changes in it. So just in terms of the process, the next review is the Planning Commission's zoning committee called ZOCO. So they're going to be looking over things. And then they're looking at going to the county board in February. One of the thing I was most interested in, and is that the resident amenity center has been moved to one of the new construction. So they are not going to be demolishing a historic building. So that is, it's not entirely altruistic, but they're trying to get tax credits. And so if they demolish historic buildings, they don't get tax credits, which, I mean, it's good. It's good that they realize that.
It actually shows that the tax credits work
Yes.
to achieve historic preservation.
And I did, when we had a session, I commented that I appreciated that particular change and thought that it was good that the building was going to be preserved and it will be a residential building. So they didn't know which new building the amenity center was going to be located in. But they talked a lot about different sections, not a lot, but some different sections and zoning districts. Looking at, this is all the profile stuff, not profile, cross-section stuff. So section 7 is the one that I think we're talking about a little bit later, dealing with changes in the buildings when Virginia Department of Housing tax credit, Virginia Housing tax credits are sought. Now we also talked about aerial access. Apparently some of those cross sections were not something that the fire department approved of, and so they have to modify some of the areas to try to get aerial access in the event of emergencies. Because if you've ever driven through Barcroft or walked through Barcroft, it's tricky. Talking about, I just had some cryptic notes. The regulating plan has been, I guess it's still being updated to some extent, mostly updated. That limits redevelopment. And they've relocated some of the public park areas. Looking at revised boundaries for development and conservation areas. And they also talked about expanding preserved natural areas. Some of the areas of Barcroft are going to be eliminated from the commercial form-based code. Mostly, so that'll, I guess, just apply to the north side of Columbia Pike. And there was some discussion about parking, confirming that it's 1 1/8 parking space per unit. They're looking at. That was pretty much it. They did provide some updates on other parts of Columbia Pike. One being the Elkins building, which we talked about over several different HLRB meetings. It now has a frame shop. It's on the corner of Walter Reed and Columbia Pike, the northeast corner.
What did they say about that? The project proceeding?
They are looking at, I think, the form-based code aspects of it, but it was very, very short report. I don't
The
have.
plans were approved.
I will have an update on that after.
Okay.
So I remember seeing that about a year ago.
we will have an update on that after all the site plans.
Oh, and they also talked about the Barcroft renovation use permits, giving more opportunity for 3-bedroom units. Those are gonna be. Because I think we talked about this a little bit. They found some unused storage areas, and so they could do the 3-bedroom units on the ground.
Thanks. So one thing I wanted to bring up, it's probably a good place to put it, is that now that these meetings have happened, staff is now going to be working behind the scenes to kind of figure out how we make this all, present this to the county board to approve, and also see if there's any changes that we need to do in the form-based code, because it just needs to be polished up. And so those are some of the things that I've been talking to Joan and Dick about, where all of the projects that we've seen in Barcroft with the renovation projects, whenever Lauren Riley would come to us, she basically would say, here is the scope of the project. And almost all of it is okay to do because it's in part 7 of the form-based code, the neighborhood form-based code. Part 7 is very much like, this is how you're supposed to treat historic buildings. If there's wood windows, replace them with wood windows. If you want to do window openings to make them larger, please don't. Like there's this kind of direction like that. And she would always point out the things that aren't going to meet up with part 7, like the entry canopies. Or the covering of wood trim. And those were requirements for Virginia housing. So because we've looked at 4 different rehabilitation projects and we've been comfortable with saying, please try and get a waiver from Virginia Housing to do these improvements. However, if you can't, then we're comfortable with the approaches because X, Y, and Z. Since we've been comfortable with that, I would like us to propose we make some changes in part 7 to allow those types of items in their scope so that they will just conform to part 7 because we've been comfortable with that approach. Now, that doesn't mean that the Gerald Lynch team or other project teams, because this is not just Barcroft, this would then affect all of Columbia Pike in the form-based code. People would still need to come and present to the HLRB. They would still have to tell us all about the project. We could still say, we have questions on this. How are you doing this? Please follow this type of approach. All of that stays the same. All it would do is actually all the things that we've seen on repeat with what they're doing with the rehab would be something that would then be updated in part 7 of the form-based code. And then it just is because we've been kind of doing this and saying it is okay. So if everybody would like, I can present what those text changes are going to look like. We could talk about them at the December meeting. That would still fall in line with when they're going to go to the county board in February. And if everybody's comfortable with it, and if they aren't, that will be the time we can talk about it. Yeah.
That makes sense, but I still don't understand how this fits with the Virginia tax thing.
Sure. So
Sort of elaborate on that.
well, I mean, Virginia Housing basically is saying that in order for them to be eligible for their credits, they have to make those changes, which doesn't conform to our part 7. So again, the canopies, they want to make sure that there are canopies over entrances. So the people who have disabilities are taking, that kind of thing, are able to get into the building comfortably. But we don't say that that's okay in part 7. And then with the cladding over wood trim, that I think is mainly for maintenance reasons. And so, but the great thing is the Department of Historic Resources also has a say, and they could say, we don't want you to put that cladding over it. Get a waiver from that requirement from Virginia Housing. You can move forward with your project.
But would we be just then sort of signing off on changes to the section 7 of the form-based code? Sort of in spirit. I mean, we don't really have any jurisdiction over that, do we?
No, but it would.
Are we blessing it? Is that what we're doing?
I mean, that's the other thing. If it's in the form-based code, then it is, well, that's the other thing. Every time that they've been coming, it's been for informational items. So there's no approving or denying. So again, it is kind of in the matter of allowing the form-based code the whole time is to make it predictable for the customers and the developers. So if they have that there, which we've been showing precedent that we're comfortable with it, then that will just make it more streamlined, which is kind of the point of the properties code.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, we can add that to the December agenda.
And when we do, what will we be doing?
Well, we'll just be,
Voting on it, or-
nope, there's no vote. It's more of a discussion. And if people don't like us making it so that it is any part of part 7 is changed, or only some of it, then we don't pitch it.
Thanks.
The next site plan is the Pentagon Hotel or Hotel Pentagon.
I can handle that one. So Hotel Pentagon is a site plan project that's going on. The first site plan meeting happened on November 14th. And
Sorry, I was unable.
that is totally fine. So Ray volunteered to Andrew Hackler was the backup. Unfortunately, just didn't work out with the schedule. But basically, just to kind of explain a little bit about the project, right now there are 2 hotel entities that are on there, Hotel Pentagon and the other one, Comfort Inn. And basically a developer is coming in, they want to demolish those buildings and they're going to build 37 townhouses as well as a 9-story multifamily residential building on the property. And the reason why I wanted to have HALRB insight is just to kind of get familiar with the project. It's in Green Valley. I should have said that first. Sorry. It's in the Green Valley neighborhood.
It's on the edge of Green Valley.
Thank you.
Yes.
And you can see it from the highway. And it's right next
Right on, I
to,
believe, north of the highway.
and it's right next to the Lomax Church and Cemetery, which is a local
So
historic
another-
district. And I've been working with staff as well as the developer to kind of already make suggested changes, which is basically making sure that there is enough of a buffer between the Lomax Church and the new construction. And right now they're coming up with a nice green ribbon, which is going to be an open green space. Very, very narrow park, but it'll be there. And then there will also be a private service road that will be a buffer from the height of the 9-story building and the townhouses. And just even direction, like the first thing I think a lot of them thought was, let's put up a fence. I'm like, no, let's not put up a fence because that doesn't really go very well when you're managing African-American historic sites and neighborhoods to create barriers like that. So let's make it a bit more friendly and we'll figure it out from there. So just like some simple suggestions like that. So we don't know when the next site plan is going to be, but I imagine it's probably going to be in January.
So when I've reviewed the materials, even though I wasn't able to go, it struck me that the specific site, and I drove through it to see where it was. It's huge.
Yeah.
For Arlington.
Okay.
And it is kind of the gateway
Yeah.
to the neighborhood. I wonder if they've considered keep taking into account some of the historic buildings of the neighborhood and try to reflect it in some of their design elements that face Glebe Road, just to make it feel like a gateway property to Green Valley. That would be, it wouldn't be very hard to do. It could just be done in materials. It could be done in kind of angle or view, the way that they cite the accesses. They're filling the property up really with structure and a little bit of parking. So I assume they're meeting all of the requirements for parking, et cetera, which kind of rankle me. They're always too small.
Yeah.
But it's such a keynote kind of property for that neighborhood. I wonder if we're asked our opinion, could we say, why don't you look around the neighborhood before you build this place? Think of it as a gateway to Green Valley, a modern gateway, and try to integrate it into the neighborhood rather than have it sit like it does now with those 2 hotels as kind of a carve out in the neighborhood, which is what you often see in minority neighborhoods, where properties have been taken on all the edges. It'd be just nice if it fit in.
No, I definitely agree. And I think it would be good for us to kind of work together and providing those types of comments, which is very funny. Planner Kevin Lamb, he's involved a lot in some of the other site plans that we're going to talk about. So that would be something that would be good for us to provide him feedback on. So that can be considered and provided with the developer, and that can be brought up in the next SPRC.
I presume there's some representative from the Green Valley.
Yes. Yes.
So that you might think they would be receptive to that idea. It'd be very helpful in finding neighborhood landmarks that could be reflected in the art.
Well, the Lomax is the obvious one.
Yes, they are all, representatives from all of them are included in this SPRC. That's a very good signal.
What's the use of the new property?
It's gonna be residential.
Intense.
And 9-story residential.
We would. Occasion to go. I go by it a lot lately because County's Art Center is, you know,
I think that new building that they built, apartments, not townhouses.
but it looks like town.
Yes, they do look like, yeah.
And the golf course is right there too.
Yes.
Yes.
Right, yeah, right there.
There's a very tall apartment building back.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that side is part of Green Valley. Is that part of Green Valley? On the other side of Glebe?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty,
Okay.
but
Well, there's still neighborhood staff. You get beyond. the-
Yeah.
Lomax is considered part of Green Valley.
Oh, yeah. It's a centerpiece. On the other side.
Well, that is Green Valley,
Is it?
where the golf course was. Yeah, that
It
was,
is.
that was the
Okay.
original Green Valley. So
Okay.
side where Lomax is sort of
Oh, okay.
part of it, but the original Green Valley was on the other side, I believe.
I didn't know that.
we got a couple more to go over.
Next one is gonna be, Millwood.
Well, I don't know where Nan is.
Yeah, I haven't gotten.
That's okay.
Parking is not.
It was horrible today.
I hate that.
What's the enemy?
I wanted to go around until I found a
One
place.
of the first for the
I thought I had, that's what I'm gonna start doing.
tour.
But it's faster for me to use that lot.
Well, we can talk about, she gave me her summary of, but, on Monday, there was the first site plan SPRC meeting that happened. Melwood property, this is the, project that you all heard about in June, where you all, property. There was also a walking tour earlier in the day. Dick, do you want to just give a quick, anything about the walking tour?
Yeah, there are a lot of people there. There are probably 50 at least, including many representing Melwood, their architect, lots of county planning staff, 2 planning commissioners, a lot of neighborhood people. They had a 4-page handout that showed sort of what they were planning to build and where the footprint of it would be. And it's going to be a complete demolition of the old Nellie Custis School. The new building won't even really be on the same footprint. It'll be moved closer to the street on one side and being arranged in a different way. It's going to be somewhere between 5 and 6 stories tall. Because it fronts the main street, 23rd Street in Crystal City.
Taller than anything there.
Yeah, and it's going to be pretty substantial development, and there's a lot of support for it, the affordable housing and also housing for people with disabilities, subsidized, yes. And so this thing is baked. I get the sense that it's really on a fast track. You know, despite the fact that we have asked for a study that be looked at as a possible historic, property that would be protected.
I think they'd be receptive to incorporating any.
Well, that was what I was going to get to. They have created this facade for it that is, I just had a picture of it. Do you have a picture of it?
Yes, and here's the fun part. Nan just joined us. Hi, Nan. I'm sorry if there was challenges with getting meeting.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on in Clarington tonight, but I spent like half an hour circling around trying to find a spot, and I finally just gave up and came home.
Oh,
Well, Nan, we just got into the Melwood project, so if you'd be happy to, you could share your summary of how the SPRC meeting went on Monday, that would be great.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so it looks like you already started talking about it, but I attended the SPRC meeting, which is going to be the first of 2 meetings. And as you can see, Melwood is still requesting a zoning variance to be able to demolish the Nellie Custis School, but they've made a few changes in their drawing for what they would potentially build. And staff showed this. They did note that the local historic district application study is still underway with the outcome unknown, but the SPRC is a kind of separate and parallel process. So they're just not really taking that into consideration right now. But as you can see, if you look at the center section here, Melwood has redesigned it to pay attention to some of the GLUP recommendations from the spring, and I think Omari was involved in those. But there's a stepped parapet now in the center area. They're using red brick. There's symmetrical fenestration. There's, oh yeah, that's good to zoom a bit. They're kind of reproducing the limestone course. And also they're reproducing the idea that there would be the look of a central entryway with an awning, which was in the original 1923 footage. It's not actually going to be an entryway, which is a little confusing, but they're doing this recreation. So they presented that. The Aurora Hills Civic Association presented their continued opposition on the basis of density, and also they feel there's unfairness in their opinion, South Arlington not getting as much preserved as North Arlington. So there were those presentations. The points that I made on behalf of HALRB were, first of all, just to remind everyone that the local historic study is still going on. But as far as the planning here is, I think it's good that they're paying some attention to the GLUP recommendations. I did encourage them to come back to HALRB or DRC as plans evolve. There were some specific discussions about, oh yeah, that's even better. There were some specific discussions about aspects of the design, like they're putting big transformers right next to the playground, parking, the fire engine, paved turnaround, things like that. So I think it's an evolving design. And I also pointed out that it would be great if there could be space in the site plan for a historical marker, ideally on the 23rd Street footage where the recreation is going to be. So public opinion. So Kevin Lamb, who is the planner who was running the meeting, said that public opinion, they did a feedback period. Public opinion had been pretty mixed about the project. And I would say from the public speakers at the meeting, public opinion was mixed there too. There are some objections to the density and the size. There were also people who were really, really appreciative that this is going to provide 100 affordable and accessible housing units that are needed and that are walking distance to the metro. So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I would say, very unscientific impression of the committee once there was committee discussion is that it was pretty favorable to the project. I didn't hear any committee members opposing the project in principle. There were some specific issues that I just mentioned, but I guess we'll see what happens with the next meeting, which I think Dick is going to attend.
But I don't believe there will be specifically discussion about historic preservation on the agenda. I don't.
It hasn't been.
Yeah, it was supposed to be on the agenda for the meeting on Monday evening, and the meeting ran over, and they just kind of didn't really get into it at the end. They just talked about the site design and said people could throw in preservation remarks. So I'm not sure if it will get brought up again next time or not.
I mean, this is frustrating that, well, first of all, that they're like recreating it when they have a
looks like a
historic building
diner.
right there that they could just adapt. Yeah, I just don't like how they're going about it. And then they're not really giving much, credence to historic preservation. It's not even on the agenda.
Being there was because the recreation is attempting to look like the building as it once existed originally. It doesn't look anything like the building that's there now, really. So it's a little hard to tell how authentic it looks because maybe it looks more authentic, to the original building, but to the one that's there now, it doesn't really.
Was
I
that
guess maybe I've never
recreation
seen the
school
original.
part of the original school?
The
Yeah.
facade there,
The facade, yeah.
allegedly, yeah.
That's closer to what the
Yeah.
original historic facade looked like.
Yeah.
But they have kind of chopped off the half basement story.
The window looks like a dime.
Requested that they bring back, which is always a challenge sometimes when designers and architects are trying to work with different floor plates and whatnot, but I think it would make more sense to have at least a historic marker talking about providing the historic context and providing some historic photographs to go along with it. But that is more, I think if they aren't getting down to the detail of that, and that might be something that is part of the site plan conditions. Nan?
Yeah, just one more point. There was a question about whether they could keep and reuse the brick from the building, the school that's there now, and they said they would look into that. So that'll maybe be something that gets followed up next time.
Is there a way that we can get that in writing? I mean, on a lot of projects, people say that they're going to reuse it and then it magically becomes unsalvageable.
We can have that as a part of the conditions.
It's a site plan
Maybe it's
condition.
Yeah. Yes, Greg?
So I thought that there's a historic review being done, right? But they're proceeding as if
The
there
county is
isn't one
keeping,
being done.
county is keeping both processes separate. And that's, they don't ever meet. And so that's.
Okay.
One's on a fast track, the other's on a slow track.
Exactly. So by the time the slow track gets there, fast track will have left the station.
Although, what could hold them up?
You tell us.
A new Virginia law that says that they're supposed to consider this before they.
I have one other question for Nan. Nan, it looks like
Yeah.
that's a single story
Exactly.
replication of that facade.
Right.
Why? And it goes back a long way, right? It's kind of surrounded by this new structure with the apartments in it. There's no way that they could just repurpose the building that's there and wrap around it the same apartment buildings?
You're asking all the right questions.
Yeah.
The facade
Yeah,
of the.
that's a good question. I mean, if
It looks
Lauren,
like
if you
it's
can,
just in the front yard, basically,
They,
which they could
want
turn
the-
into a nice park.
yeah, and Kevin Lamb did notice that although he said, they have taken into account some of the style recommendations from the GLUP study, it does not have the featured sort of green space and trees of the original. And they've done some kind of switcheroo with the other parcel on the site where they are transferring the density and tree allowances so that they're able to cut more trees down than you would think. Sorry, I don't know the technical term for what they're doing, but Lauren, if you can go back to the more zoomed out picture, it really does fill up the block quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's 5 stories with underground parking.
We've had several projects where they've taken the facades down and, built new buildings behind them. I mean, I can think of 5 or 6. Most of those, I think, have been limestone panels. I don't know that there's any that they took the bricks one by one and then I know that there's one in the District of Columbia. I think it's at Pennsylvania Avenue and 6th or 7th Street, where it's a yellow brick building that they took it all down and then rebuilt it around a new building. So that is possible. It could be expensive, but I would prefer, if they are thinking about this facade thing, to take the bricks down and rebuild them, maybe at a different location. Because to me, that facade really doesn't look like the old facade at all, especially it's not as high, and you need a historic marker to tell anybody what it's, without the historic marker, it's kind of useless. But with the historic marker, it might work, sort of. But if they actually took the facade and you could put that on the historic marker, I think it would work a lot better.
Real good point.
Yeah.
Did they have a picture that they're going off of? Because I can't
There
even
isn't.
find anything that Looks somewhat like that.
Well, they have historic photographs, but we aren't asking them to take it back to what it
Right.
used to look like.
Right.
It is more what the existing building is what we would like them to consider doing facade, at the minimum facade preservation. So we're continuing to work with them. There'll be another SPRC. Therefore, there'll be another update.
Yes, there are unfortunate precedents for facadectomies.
Have some good ones and some bad ones.
This is total demolition.
Well,
Not a-
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
So
and
and then
then
putting
building
up
a
a-
big thing nowhere near where the old facade was.
Not even.
It's one story when the old facade is 2 or 3.
That's-
You know,
But
it's
interesting.
it's a brand new building. And they're justifying that by saying there has to be a garage underneath it. And that's, you know, the whole building has.
The feel is very different too, because the old building, yes, it's half a story higher, but it's also that it's just that part and it's surrounded by green space and trees, whereas the new part is surrounded by a tall building. So it, even though it has the same, roof line, the feel is completely different.
If you look at the windows in the existing building, there's no reason why they couldn't at least use a feature like that.
I think they said that the new windows there that are much larger replicate the original windows that were in the facade of the school. That a lot of when they put new windows in the school, they bricked up a lot of the facade, put in smaller windows. To be fair.
Which is why we gave them a lot of flexibility in the glove study direction concerning historic preservation, because we knew it was going to be kind of a creative design approach, similar to what we ended up doing with the First Federal Savings Building over in the Courtyard Landmark Commodore building over there, where we had to kind of go off of a grainy photograph in the newspaper to try and bring it a little bit back to what it was before. So we knew it wouldn't be accurate. That's kind of what we were envisioning for whatever future project this would be. So we'll just continue to be working.
This slideshow, is there a kind of a blueprint of the whole site?
I think there's one of this.
I only did.
That's all.
That at least shows you the full site.
Yeah.
That's the current site.
This is
That's the current
site,
Yeah.
yeah, and then this is the part behind it.
And there is, on the county site plan, active site plan page, you can get all of the presentation materials there.
Yeah, you see the yellow dots? That's the outline of the new building.
Okay.
They state that the footprint is pretty much the same as the existing building.
It's like it's a lot larger.
I think that's just the
Actually,
parcel.
that's the property line, but the building hugs the property line along the front.
Mm-hmm.
And then that back part is going to be where the controversial transformers are, and a big turnaround for not so much, but trash trucks and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
And that on the left side, there's a tunnel that will go down into the garage. So the building will be where those parked cars are. That'll be a tunnel that goes down under the building.
okay.
So it extends out that far. And then all those trees on the left go away because the fire department says that the street's not wide enough for a building that big, so they have to tear all the trees down and widen the road.
South Page.
So- On the,
On the left side,
23rd Street.
Grant,
On Grant?
Grant Street.
Grant Street.
Grant Street.
Grant.
oh,
We
Yeah.
had similar
Oh.
issues that we had to work with the Reeves Farmhouse when we were coming up with the plans for that. Many of the trees had to come out because of the driveway needing to be 19 feet wide to accommodate the trucks.
There's a lot of rhetoric also about protecting the park, but the land bordering the park is where all the trash trucks will go into, in and out of.
So why do the transformers have to be above ground?
Hard to find. They have a hard time finding space underground.
But
There's a lot of good questions concerning that.
Oh.
In the essence of time, is it okay if we go to the next slide?
sure. Conversation, guys. Pick one that's later.
Thank you.
And one more thing, I guess, for this, I mean, I think the thing that is too bad about this, I think that and really makes this site for me historically is that front yard that's there, which is gonna go away. That's kind of essence of what, I don't know. Obviously, I made that building special anyways.
I agree with Mark. That's what the community really would like to see, I think, Keith. But there's not a way they can design around it. Even half of it.
But, all right, moving on.
Sorry, I'm gonna follow up with the bylaws, which aren't as interesting. But as I noted in the email to you all, I've got the draft up on the screen, so we can talk about it, do a general overview of what the proposed updates to the bylaws are going to be. But my intention tonight is not to have, a full robust discussion. It's more to see if there are any initial questions or concerns with what is being proposed, but that the real discussion will happen in December, and that's also when you all will make a motion and vote on the updates. So let me go to the page and just remind here. Okay, so the main reason that this is happening is because the Virginia General Assembly requires that commissions have a separate electronic meeting policy document. We originally had it baked into the bylaws, and now we've been advised by the county attorney's office to take it out. And so that's the section up here that's being removed from the bylaws. But we also thought that it would be good to update our attendance section in general. And so we've added some clarification to the, actually, let me zoom in a little bit because this is rather hard to read. Some clarification about the attendance for commission members. So right now, the original has it as you can't, anyone who misses more than 3 consecutive regular meetings or more than half the regular meetings in a calendar year. That language has been pretty confusing for some members in the past, and we thought that it would be better to have some something a little bit more straightforward. We also wanted to, in the post-pandemic world that we live in, add a little bit more information about people experiencing medical conditions who are serving on the commission, anybody who might be experiencing a death in the family or other emergencies of a similar nature, and how that would coincide with their attendance and how that could be addressed by the chair, essentially, in the future. So those are the main changes in the attendance section. But we also added this section here, section K, which is an electronic meeting policy, and it just directs people to know where our electronic meeting policy document actually lives, and also has language in there about the fact that we utilize the county board's electronic meeting policy if it includes language that allows the applicability to county commissions. So it's all relatively straightforward, more of like a housekeeping item, but if there are any questions, concerns, I'm happy to talk about them now. We also will have time dedicated at next month's meeting to discuss it further.
That looks good.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. The one thing I do want to note, per the bylaws, anytime that you all vote for an update to the bylaws, you have to have a certain amount of members in attendance, which is why I wanted to understand who would be here for the December meeting, because we need at least 7 members present at the December meeting in order to vote for an update to the bylaws. So I wanted to take a yes.
Is this the only update?
To the bylaws? Yes. So it's only the section.
It's part of the requirement.
It's part of the
You have-
bylaw
Oh,
requirement.
you have to see it twice.
You have to see it.
You have to present it.
Yeah.
Yes.
We like twice.
Nice to clear it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it gonna be the 17th of December? Is that
I think it's the 8th, actually.
18th?
Yeah.
So
Yes,
we
I'm
don't
sorry.
have 7, it'll have to get postponed until January.
That's just the regulars, third Wednesday.
Third
Yep.
one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Does anyone, I know that we've gotten I have a couple of responses, Gray. I know we've already talked. I got your response, Dick, thank you. And then Andrew, who's not here, said that he would maybe be attending virtually. Does anybody here know that they definitely will not be at the December meeting? Aside from you, Gray.
I probably will not be.
Okay, Thank you, Nan.
Sooner you all know, please let us know. December is a tricky month, I know, with a lot of holiday commitments. So we would appreciate it. That way we can figure out the agenda. Because we'll be finalizing it.
Look at the calendar.
Usually a week after DRC, Tuesday
Yeah.
after DRC.
Yeah. Should be able to make it.
Yeah, I should be
Okay.
able to make it. So.
Well, thank you all so much. And I'll send them around again next month, and then I will post them on the website for next month's meeting as well. And we can, if you have any questions that come up between now and then, happy to talk about them in next month's meeting. All right, and then I think that was it for this. Yeah. All right. So the only other staff item that we had was a actually we have two more.
Yeah, can you hold on 1 second?
Yeah.
Larry? Hi. Can you tell us why you're here? Thanks for being so patient.
It's always a pleasure to be with people who care about historic preservation. Doesn't happen that often.
This is fully half the people in the county.
On behalf of Walker Chapel, wanted to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for the assistance you've given us in our historic cemetery project. It is done.
Bravo.
The trees are in. And the big tree that you approved last meeting is down. And on the 25th of this month, Fairfield is coming to replace that tree with a tree that should last 400 years and be another noble tree. We also have a COA, just like you do, except that ours is a certificate of appreciation. And we'd like to give this to Michael.
Cool.
And it says, presented to Michael Tony of Arlington County Department of Community Planning, Housing and Development for her service to the Historic Landmark Affairs Review Board, leading to the successful completion of the Walker Chapel Historic Cemetery Project. And it's signed by our pastor, signed by our good friend James Wright, who is the chair of the leadership board, and signed by me, the lowly guy that takes care of the cemetery. It's a wonderful PR moment to introduce you to the chapel, because they've heard things about the HALRB and they try to figure out what the letters are. But I'd like them to get to know you better, because certainly over the past 8 years, we've been working with you. And we do have 6 more projects to last the next 8 years, so.
It sounds like we should come visit.
Would it be possible to gather and get a group picture?
Oh, yeah, sure. If that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see, should we just stand?
Such a beautiful wall back there. Stand.
And take a photo of us. Okay, great. I'll have my camera. Should we just turn towards or where do you all from? Would you like,
And I feel like if we're gonna take a picture,
That's
if we're gonna take a picture, let's like,
Yeah, let's put it here.
around the table pictures never.
right here.
Yeah.
People in the back.
All right.
We should have
Come
them,
over here against this wall.
We should have them presenting you. Michael, you should be being presented.
Oh, okay, okay.
oh, that in front of you.
And Lynn, why don't you come in and what we can do, is
Yeah.
we can take photos and we can send it to you.
Yeah.
Okay, that way you're all.
Yeah,
you're good. No, you're good.
There we go.
Have you got everybody in?
We got it through. Thank you. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Want to do another one?
Yeah.
1. Okay, so the one in the back. I can't really see you. Yeah, you.
He's so short.
I can see you now. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you so much.
You have another career ahead of you.
Thank you for coming. Happy to help. It's great. I'll make sure you get it, okay?
The last Walker tackle was for blood drive.
Everybody on the call, thank you for your patience. We're wrapping up. Yeah, absolutely. You can do that. We can do that.
Okay. I'm just going to do that. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So as I promised, we do have a little bit of an update. So the Elkins Building, 2801 Columbia Pike, the county board approved it on the consent agenda this Saturday, November 16th. And that we heard in 2022. Last time it was in, when was it? July of 2023 was the last time we saw that project. It took a lot of times. Just as a reminder, that is on Columbia Pike, Walter Reed, and it is going to be facade preservation. And we also came up with some creative designs to be able to get that transit shelter into one of the retail spaces. And that got approved. And not only that, I always forget that the form-based code, when there is something like that, we get some form of preservation, not just of the actual project, but real preservation, either being a local historic district or an easement. So we're going to get a facade easement on that building. So 40 years from now, when that new building goes away, that facade will still be there. So
Good.
that's a nice little bonus. So
Is it still the design that we saw
It's the
as their
design
modified
that we
design?
saw. Yeah.
Great.
Same position, that's
Yeah.
a big deal.
Same position.
Big step
I
back.
had to give a little bit of an explanation to why we were very, very stuck on that, which is good. And that also has precedent for how we address historic facades along Columbia.
And the same fenestration. Wow.
Yeah, it's all there. It's all in the
Perfect.
conditions. And we even have the stamped plans in the board report from the HLRB. So it's a nice one.
Yes, very nice.
So I will keep this brief. I wanted to pass this. I wanted to give a brief update about a training that I attended. It was called a camp training. I had sent it around as one of the opportunities you all could have used for your CLG training. So they have them. They used to have them every year. They took a hiatus because of COVID, but I think they're going to pick it up again. It's hosted by the Virginia Department of Historic Resources, as well as the National Alliance for Preservation Commission. And basically it's a training that's catered towards groups like ours and then staff. So I attended just to see what it was all about and what the training included. It had a lot of information about historic preservation law, which was really interesting, and a lot of good outreach opportunities that other localities have employed. It was hosted in Fairfax, so I learned a lot about how they do preservation too, which was really interesting. But the good news is that a lot of what they mentioned are things that were included in our updated plan. So it was exciting to see that we're on par and also leaders on historic. Excited about that. But I thought I would just mention it. Once I see the training posted for next year, I will definitely share it with you all if you're interested in attending. It is like an all-day session, so it is more of a commitment. But they handed out this handout that has some tips and tricks for commissioners that I thought would just be a good reminder for everybody based off of the different training they do in Virginia.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's it.
All right, well, anything else for good of the order? Questions, comments? With that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
I have one more thing though, personal business. But we have our three newly married members of staff. So I did bring a treat for everybody, and I'm sorry I didn't get them before you guys started eating candy. I was trying to give them the eagle eyes, but I wanted the three of you to be sitting here. So you may recognize these buildings. I'll just set them out. There's definitely enough for everyone to have one, but there'll be a few extra too. So we have the Hume School, the Arlington Historical Museum, and then we have the Harry S. Gray Building, townhouse, yeah. Then we have a craftsman, typical,